We have on the agenda 5 items, and we will begin with item number 1, please.
For item number 1, you have a report from the City Administrative Officer, and this has to do with Los Angeles County Fiscal Year 2008-09 Real Estate Fraud Prosecution Grant Program and associated staffing. This item has been recommended for approval by the Public Safety Committee.
Who's here for item number 1? How about the CAO? Matt Crawford, is he here? No, Matt Crawford. All right, Captain.
Captain Bill Williams, Commanding Officer of Commercial Crimes Division. I have with me Lieutenant Dennis Lieutenant Dennis Shirey.
Thank you for the demotion.
Dennis Shirey, who is the OIC of our fraud section, also Detective Lyle Barnes, who is from our real estate unit.
Okay. So this is a grant for 437. There was a detective.
Erin Camphouse is the OIC. She is not available today.
Is she still working at?
Yes, she's still the OIC.
A lot of experience there.
Yes, she does.
Okay, I understand that with the foreclosures as they are, there's probably a big demand on what this section does.
That's correct.
And the number of personnel that are assigned.
We still have the same number there. We have 2 D3s and 3 D2s that are assigned to the unit.
And how backlogged are they?
At this juncture, let's see here, I think we're working about 107 cases, if I recall correctly. And each of those cases, very extensive work is required for them. And let's see here. Do we have the backlog there? There we go.
Are you one of the working detectives?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
And we have 107 investigations that we're working on now.
107 current?
Yes.
Okay. What kind of prosecution cooperation we get with the courts and the prosecutors?
Well, you know, as with the grant, we work with LA County Sheriffs and the DA's office, and actually we work closely with the district attorney. So I think there's very good cooperation, and I think also there's a district attorney in the task force that's assigned there. We don't.
Are people going to jail for the crimes they're committing?
Well, yes. Like, for example, last year we filed, out of 9 we presented, we filed 5 cases.
How many did they investigate last year?
Well, we are looking between fiscal year for between July 1st, 07 through June 30th of this year, we investigated 107.
107?
Yes.
And only 5 filed?
These take quite a bit of time for investigation, so it takes a long
The others
time.
are still ongoing?
We got ongoing.
Okay. And then the judges throw away the key, or do they give them probation, or what kind of sentence are they getting?
I'm not aware.
You're probably talking thousands of dollars.
Yes, sir. It varies depending on the amount of money that's involved and the amount of victims involved.
The problem getting worse or better?
It's worse.
It's getting worse. Okay, I don't know if there's any publicity on the program to the general public. We've got a lot of different programs that we publicize.
I think there's some. Matter of fact, Aaron has done a number of speaking engagements within the department and out, and I think even at our last meeting last year, we had one request from one council office. I don't remember which one, but we did have people go out there. So anytime that we are asked to come out, we do discuss it. And what we're looking at this year is trying to work with media relations and put information out also.
Yeah, I mean, I'll get more cases, obviously, and more people will be aware to it. But maybe through the neighborhood councils, to get involved, at least informed that it exists. Because most people, if you ask them, they don't even know it exists. And they become a victim. By that time, we can maybe prevent it before it gets to that point. So it's not going to cost the taxpayers any money because it's a grant?
Well, that's not necessarily so, because the grant, it's going to cost a little bit. We requested 847,000, but we're only getting 430 7,000, of course, because of the revenue for the county. So we're going to have some salaries that will have to be taken out there, and we may not never be able to cover all the salaries.
Okay, if it was the 413 is
Yeah.
included
Yes.
in the budget, 0809 budget.
Yes.
And then it's got 32,675 training and travel, contractual services, administrative costs. What are they going for $32,000? Training and travel.
My notes here indicate we've used about 2,500 of that. Some of it's for subscription, for subscription service for getting document fees and things of that nature. But
They show here 32,675. So I don't know what kind of training, travel.
I'll have to check on that because I'm not aware of it.
Can you find that out before
Yes.
it comes to the full council? 'Cause
Yes.
we'll recommend this for approval from this committee, but there's a question, 32,675, says it's used for training, travel, contractual services, and administrative costs.
I think, yes.
Dennis, you have an answer for that? The 32,675? Okay. Okay. I understand the salary component, but it's got this 32,675.
We'll get back to you.
Okay.
Because I don't know.
She
she
has
here?
it, she doesn't have it, they're looking it up.
She is here.
Okay.
Wanda Bell, LAPD Fiscal Operation Division. I believe that the CEO's report, the figures that's reflected in there is off of an old budget because their new budget is $19,000, $2,500 for training and travel, $10,000 for subscription services, $5,000 for the cellular phones, and $1,500 for office supplies.
Okay.
And that was due to the reduced amount of funding.
So it's not 32,000?
No, it's not 32,000.
Okay, because that's the report that I have that
Yes,
obviously is
and that's
corrected. And they call this WIFU? What's it called? REFU?
oh, I don't know what
We-
the
The real estate unit?
Real estate,
Yeah.
real estate fraud protection, that's what it's called,
Yes.
REFU. They're called REFU?
Refu.
I mean, Dennis, what do they call this thing? Because they got in the notes here, REFU.
That's what the acronyms are, but I guess they don't go by that.
They don't call it
They
REFU.
don't call
No.
it that.
LAPD. They love acronyms. Dennis has been around a long time. He's probably created some of those acronyms. Yeah, it says the REFU is within LAPD's commercial crimes. See, the CCD, they don't say commercial crimes division, they spell that out. Anyway, just another side note. Okay, so we recommend moving on that. And that'll go to council when?
Be determined.
To be determined, okay. Well, it's gonna be determined, probably obviously after Thanksgiving,
Okay.
hopefully before Christmas. All right, thank you. Number
Want to get
2,
concurrence from Mr. Parks?
oh, he'll concur first, the police department. It's the real estate fraud unit grant,
Number one?
number 1.
I just have one question.
Yes.
Could you just, one thing I was just wondering on that, because it was a little unclear, the total grant is what, 400?
437.
437. What we'd like you to do as you go to next year, if there's any way that we can ensure that that there are no costs to the general fund, and that all of the reimbursements are done during the fiscal year in which we get the grant,
Don't catch up late.
which means we bill them on time, get the money back, which doesn't create a cash flow problem for the budget.
All right, I will relay that information.
Okay?
Here's a budget lead right here.
We're not going to be able to return all of the funds during the
I know.
fiscal year because of that last
Well-
quarter. It won't be until the following fiscal year. But-
If you can get 3 quarters in one fiscal year,
We'll
then
get
you've
the
done a
3
good job.
We'll get the
But-
3 quarters.
But we don't want to have a year or 3 quarters that lack beyond June 30th.
Okay.
That way we won't have to cut so much. Thank you, Cap, good seeing you. All right, number 2, please.
What you have before you is reports from the Department of Fire and Police Pensions, as well as the board, and this has to do with the annual performance evaluation of the department's general manager.
Good afternoon. I'm Laura Guglielmo, Assistant General Manager for Fire and Police Pensions. My understanding is that the last meeting, your question really involved around the process for the board to evaluate the general manager. If you'd like me to go into what that process is, I'd be happy to, or I can just address whatever questions you have.
No, just go into that, please.
Okay, the board has adopted a policy and procedure consistent with the city charter to annually evaluate the general manager, and that process is documented in our governance manual. It includes a survey that each board member is asked to complete, and evaluates the general manager's leadership and management skills in the areas of strategic planning and implementation, operations, which in our case is the delivery of benefits, leadership and personnel development, and staff development and supervision. The board members complete the surveys and submit them confidentially to a third-party consultant that compiles the results. The summary is then prepared for the board, and they meet in closed session to discuss the general manager's performance and to communicate any future expectations. He was rated at this last, for the period ending June 30th, 2007, June 30th, 2008, he was rated as meeting or exceeding expectations in all areas. The consultant recommended that the board grant him a merit pay increase. The board concurred and granted him a 5% increase.
That's how they came about it. Strategic planning, implementation, operations, leadership, personal development, staff development, supervision. Okay. And the percent funded now, are they 98, 99, 100%?
As of June 30th, 2008, our last actuarial evaluation, which was just completed, we were 99 point something percent funded. There wasn't a change from the prior year. However, we obviously have seen very poor investment performance along with the general market, and we do not anticipate reaching 100% funding in the short-term future anyway.
But the fund's not in jeopardy of...
The funds are not in jeopardy. It's certainly a question a lot of our members have asked and are concerned about. The stock market has done very poorly. We're at, this year is an historic low. It hasn't been this bad since 1931. The S&P has
Remember
lost.
1931?
Yeah, I remember it. You used to be a crossing guard. Weren't you a crossing guard?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Let's talk about you.
In the past year, to give it perspective, in the last year, the S&P 500 index lost 36%. Our fund did very poorly, but better than that. And we lost about 27, 28% in the past year. And that's as of October 31st. So it's been a very poor year across the board for all public funds, all institutional investors. We are doing better than the general stock market because of our diversification. And that's something that we want to, our members to realize, is that we have experts that are the best in the country advising us about how to invest our funds. The assets are diversified. We invest in a wide variety of assets: stocks, bonds, international equities, domestic equities, private equity, hedge fund funds, just a wide variety of investment vehicles, all designed to counteract one another and give us an optimal performance over time. Our actuarial assumption is 8% long-term. Obviously, we didn't achieve that, or we won't achieve that this current year. But long-term, we have achieved that.
Okay. Well, the concern was the criteria that they use for that 5%. They do have a basis in a review and evaluation.
Absolutely. And it's documented and followed.
Okay. Mr. Parks?
Let me ask, and I think I'm assuming that on some of the questions that are asked, such as their leadership and strategic planning, the thing that I'm most concerned about is that, it's the budget system, if I understand it, basically projects what they think their annual return is going to be. And if they happen to miss it, they kind of turn to this general fund and say, make it better. The dilemma we have is that there are times we've had double-digit increases and things. Now, how do we deal with those circumstances when we have double digits versus when we lose 26% of our investment? Are there safeguards to where when we go well over our expectation or our projection, where does that money go and how do we deal with it compared to when we go under?
Every year we hire an independent actuary that takes a look at our fund performance, the demographics, whatever the economic and demographic assumptions are for the system, and makes recommendations about what those assumptions should be, and they project what the annual contribution should be in order to meet the minimum requirements. When we exceed our assumed rate of return of 8%, that's considered an actuarial gain, and it's spread out over time. When we don't meet that, it's considered an actuarial loss, and that similarly is spread out over time. The result of several good years in a row is that it tends to have a positive impact on the city's contribution, because the city's contribution is volatile. We have three sources of income. We have our member contributions, which are fixed according to their contract. We have the market, whatever the market return is, and we do our best to achieve the maximum we can. And then the city contribution is sort of the third component. And certainly it's been an issue for many years for the city about how to equalize that contribution over time, because there have been several years in the late 90s, early 2000, where the city contribution was pretty low and historically very low. And then in recent years, it's shot up quite a bit, and it can cause a shock to the budget. Right now, we smooth our assets over 5 years, or our investment return over 5 years, to reduce the volatility. There's no way to completely eliminate the volatility, but we use the 5-year return, which is what most public pension funds use. There's been some discussion in council, by the mayor's office and council, and by our board, about extending that period of time to something maybe 7 years or more. Our actuary advises us that if you're going to make that decision, it should be to smooth out the volatility over time and not to try to market time or time the contributions. And that once you make a decision, that should be a long-term decision and not something you would change every year or two.
Yeah, I think that's something that we've looked back and forth, but I don't know if we've ever received any clear information of what is beneficial. Stay at the 5, to move to 7, because whatever decision you make is going to have to be long-term, but does it help us, whether it's good times or bad times, to be at 7 or 9 or whatever?
It helps in that it reduces the overall volatility, but it can cause a contribution increase in a given year. And for the last couple of years, our board has considered this, whether 5-year smoothing is the right choice or something different from that. And their current decision is, it's not so much a study. The actuary weighs in on what they should do, and they've weighed in the last couple of years. And the current decision by the board is to keep it at 5. But I'm sure that when we bring our budget to them this spring, that they will again look at that issue.
Ongoing review.
Yeah, ongoing review.
Okay. Then let me ask you on the 8%, is that somewhat set, or does that fluctuate as to your expected returns?
It's adopted annually, so it can change. A couple of years ago, it was 8.5%, and it was reduced down. And it's a complicated review that I got to be honest with you, I don't fully understand. It's something our actuary tells us, but there are demographic components and economic components, and they look at how long people are living and the inflation trends and that type of thing to give us their best estimate of 8%. And 8% is really the norm among public pension funds.
But that 8% is what you believe you need to make to keep the pension fund solvent.
Correct.
The 8% is not what you expect to make in the market.
No, it's both. What you do is the 8% is you need to make your investment decisions in order with the objective of having a long term of 8% so that you can meet your long-term objectives. If they were to reduce that assumption, the city contribution would increase, because you can reduce what you think you'll get from the market and shoot for less, perhaps, volatility and a safer choice to get a lower return. But then either the employer contributions will increase or the employee contributions will increase.
But I'm saying then the 8% is really keeping the system solvent.
Yes,
Okay, as a driving force, because if you hit above it, it's okay, but if you hit below it, you have to make it up. So you're hoping to invest in a strategy that meets that 8%, that keeps it at 99%.
yes, but it's long-term. In any given year, you're not going to get 8%.
Okay.
And it's not expected that you're going to get 8% every year. It's expected over the course of the life of the system, you'll get 8%.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Meanwhile, the pension's safe and secure.
Well, the thing is, isn't this year where they're talking about maybe a pretty good hit come July 1st?
Oh, yes, there will be a hit come
Yeah.
July 1st.
Yeah.
Don't say hit.
Well, meaning that our investment return has, as I
Yeah,
mentioned,
it's been dipping about
is
20%.
dipping. It will not affect the members, as both of you are members of our system.
Well, until we're dead.
That's when it counts, is before you're dead, right?
After
it-
well, then you,
And neither of us are volunteering for that.
Glad to hear it.
No.
No, it's safe. It's, you know, I'm sorry, if I actually kind of.
No, I'm just saying that the issue is for this year, we're gonna get a hit.
the hit this year.
Well, we will, that loss will be spread out over 5 years because we spread out the pain over 5
Yeah.
years. But certainly this is the worst investment loss we've
Yeah.
seen probably since the 30s.
But they're invested in.
And we have been in existence since 1980.
But the thing is, your 20-some% reduction in investment is something that, no matter how you spread it out, the city's gonna get a larger bill July 1st.
Ultimately, it will impact the city contribution.
That's right, okay.
So the city's contribution out of the general fund will increase to shore up the loss?
Right,
Mm-hmm.
but
Well, for
we
the-
know what the city contribution rate it will be for fiscal year 2009-10 because it's based on last year, on the June 30th valuation. That's been completed. So you have about a 2-year delay before you're going to see the impact of this particular market.
Yeah, and I think that's what we were concerned about on the proposal to delay the payment, which would just push you down the line that you're gonna pay. That's why we rejected that idea, figuring that you would not only have to pay down the road, but you're gonna get hit because of the economy is dropping at the same time.
Well, and I mean, at the time you were considering that, you didn't know whether it was going to go up or down, but
But we knew
certainly
that-
it proved to be a good choice.
But we knew the
It just-
bubble was not gonna keep getting bigger. Okay.
The investment portfolio, they have owned buildings, stocks, bonds, et cetera. It's very diverse.
It's very, yeah, I didn't include real estate before, but yes, we do have considerable real estate holdings.
And how's that market, the real estate market?
Everything is down right now,
Across the board?
across the board.
Okay.
Real estate, private equity, and hedge fund of funds aren't valued on a kind of daily basis the way that you can with the stock and bond market. It's done less frequently, but certainly, you know, the entire economy is hit, and it's affected all sectors, and no one is performing as they had.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that explanation. We appreciate that, and we'll, note
That's just,
file.
yeah,
Yeah.
just for your information.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you joined me on number 1, right? On
Yes.
the approval? Okay. So let's go to number 3.
For item 3, you have a memorandum from the mayor recommending a re-exemption for 1 principal project coordinator and 1 senior project coordinator for the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment.
Hi.
Hello, good afternoon. Claudia Dunn, Interim Assistant General Manager with the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment.
You've been bouncing all over the place.
I know. What you have before you is obviously a memorandum from the mayor requesting re-exemption of 2 positions within the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment per Charter Section 1001, subsection B. This will not increase the number of approved exemptions in the department, and basically, we're here to answer any questions you may have.
What's your title now?
Interim Assistant General Manager.
You were something else before.
I was I was assistant general manager there before, yes.
Yeah, but then you went someplace else.
City clerk.
Yeah. So now you went back?
They asked me to go back,
You
yes.
said yes?
Yes, I did.
They send you to the shrink first? You went voluntarily.
Yes, I
commend
did.
you for
Thank you.
to deal with challenges. It is, we're gonna fill, they left obviously,
Yes.
and, we have one public comment card. Do you have any questions on this?
No.
Okay. We got one public, if you can remain.
Sure.
Benjamin Zillow, Engineers and Architects, DAA.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How can you do it in 2 minutes?
Absolutely.
There you go. Go ahead. Don't
Yeah.
look at the clock, just talk.
I was almost done. EAA would like to see these positions converted to civil service protected positions. I think both of you gentlemen are aware of some of the morale and overall concerns going on in the Department of Neighborhood Staffing. One of the incumbents in these positions now, currently EAA has a dispute with the department related to demotion, and we believe that because of the nature of this work, because of the nature of civil service, which is to protect employees from the political whims of elected officials, that these positions would be best served and the citizens would be best served if they were converted to fully civil service protected positions.
Okay. Didn't we convert a lot of them to civil service?
Yes, the neighborhood empowerment analyst positions, they were formerly project coordinators, were converted. There's about 20 positions, I believe.
Been converted?
Yes, she's correct. However, in that process, Councilman, there was not a supervisory classification created, and so these positions you're looking at now are actually the supervisory positions over those converted analysts. So for whatever reason, and I can't speak to that, there was no senior neighborhood empowerment analyst position created, nor was there a chief neighborhood empowerment analyst position created. So they've been using the old non-exempt positions to now supervise and manage the, the exempted positions to now supervise and manage the non-exempt employees.
Would EAA represent that group also? Or is that
We do.
You do represent?
We do,
Okay.
yes.
All right. Maybe that's an item we can discuss with the department, because I know I've been very supportive of bringing them into the fold of the union representation. It doesn't only clear up the exemption part, but it does give them protection and hold people accountable. But I think in this particular case, how short are you folks right now?
We actually have 9 vacancies right now. These positions, by the way, have still not been approved technically from the exemption from the managed hiring freeze as well. So we're undertaking all of that as well too.
So this would be, take down to 7 then, if these are filled?
Yes.
So, okay. I know the mayor's asked for a 3%, police and fire 1%. And you need some people to get the job done. So what I would recommend is that we discuss how we can bring more into the fold. You said there's no supervisors in the EAA?
Actually, these 2 positions are represented by EAA. That's why I'm here today speaking on them. What I was indicating was that in the process of creating of transferring the project coordinators to civil service protected neighborhood empowerment analysts, to the best of my knowledge, there was no creation of a supervisory classification,
Okay.
and that's what these incumbents do. And so perhaps, obviously at the direction of the committee and working with Personnel and Civil Service Commission, we'd be more than happy to.
I got it. So, Willis, you take care of that?
Take a look at whether or not.
How we could do that? So the managers don't have any kind of, they're all exempt then? You're exempt too?
Yes, I
That's
am.
why you said yes when they said move over there.
Well, I wasn't before.
A good
I was-
soldier. Okay. So we'll recommend approval on that and with the personnel department to review for the supervisors as reflected by EAAs. Okay.
Let me just ask, how many exempt positions do we have? Is it 100 or something?
158, total 158?
Based Based on that provision in the charter, we can exempt 150. We currently have 105,
Out of 150.
including these, because this is a re-exemption. So
Right.
this would, it's 105, and it would remain 105.
But there's been a
exemption.
proposal out of the mayor's office to increase that to 400
It was, I think it's something,
or 500.
something came to EERC, but I don't remember what happened to it.
It
A
didn't-
while
it wasn't
back,
approved.
there was a move to increase it to the extent that the charter provides, and it allows for a certain percentage of our workforce. I believe it's 1%.
1% of the workforce.
And we currently have 48,000 employees, so it would allow
408.
for 1% of that.
So 480 versus what we have now, 150.
But that's not currently being
No.
considered anywhere.
I know as a former charter commissioner, there was a concern that there'd be so many exemptions, and that's why we put a lid at 150. We thought that was reasonable. But when we discussed the exemptions, if you have 480, that's a lot of exemptions.
Let me just ask, was there a reason why the supervisor positions were not considered when the subordinate positions were converted?
That I don't know. I just returned to the department 2 years ago, or 2 weeks ago, I'm
Seems
sorry.
like 2 years.
Seems like 2 years.
I believe that issue
He's showing
predates
you.
both of us. That issue, I believe, predates both of us.
Yes.
At the time I started representing the department, neighborhood empowerment employees, this was already underway, and so I don't have an answer for you.
Okay.
If
I was
you-
not personally involved either, but I do know that the department had some concerns. I mean, these are very unique jobs that individuals serve the community. There was a concern if we were to use a more generic civil service class, we wouldn't necessarily get the right skill set into those positions. People who knew the community,
Right.
or part of the community, could communicate with that community. There are many more restrictions as it relates to selection when you have civil service.
Right.
That's going to be part of your evaluation?
It has to be, yes.
Okay. All right. So that'll be the director. Thank you both.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay. See you in a couple of years.
Okay.
All right, let's go to 5, because 4 may take a little bit of time.
For
Number
item 5, you have a report from the Personnel Department, and this responds to your motion relative to a safeguard of city employees' personal information to prevent identity theft.
Phyllis Line. It's you. You're the presenter.
On item number 5.
You skipped one on me, yes. This report from our department is the result of a motion related to protecting employee information. The issue of identity theft is obviously extremely important to all of us. I think most of us have, if we haven't personally been affected, we know someone has been personally affected. So from the very beginning, we only collect that personal information, which we absolutely have to collect in order to perform the function that's required. So with employee selection, much of that is hard copy, and that in some instances is easier to protect from the standpoint that you have a hard copy and you will maintain it in a secure facility, and you only let certain employees who must have access to that information have access to that information, and whenever it is destroyed, it is shred or destroyed appropriately. Where there is electronic information, that's where we rely very heavily on our security folks in the IT field. We have our own IT staff, but we also work very closely with the experts in the Information Technology Agency to make sure that the appropriate firewalls are there and that we follow all the appropriate procedures to safeguard the information. That includes passwords and giving people access only to that which they must have access to do their job. I think an area that was of most concern to the council members when you drafted this motion was the area of contractors, because that's where we had an issue in one of our another city department. And we have statements from our contractors. They provide us policies and information to assure us that they do in fact safeguard information. And once again, that's through protected facilities, that's through passwords that are protected, that's through destroying hard drives whenever the information is no longer needed. And they have policies that they sign. It's part of the contractual agreement. And I do have representatives from a variety of our divisions that do work with those contractors. And so we're looking at employee selection, which is internal, but then we're looking at our benefits administration and our workers' compensation administration as the area where we are heavily involved with contractors as well.
Do we ever do audits to verify that they're doing
Yes.
what they're supposed to do?
We do. We have people on site as well, particularly with work comp, to make sure that the contract administrators are there on site to ensure that things are happening the way we believe they're happening.
Okay. So we haven't had any situations affect our 48,000 folks?
No, knock on wood.
A lot of industries have, and that,
Yes, and it can happen even when you do all the right things.
yeah. But as long as we do all the right things, hopefully it can be reduced, if not eliminated. Okay. Anything on number 5 from you?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, one of the things that we have a concern about the mass amount of information that the city collects, but from what I can determine is that most of this ID theft comes about from how people handle their material personally, in the sense of how they dispose of their own trash and their own mail and a variety. And I'm just wondering whether, as part of Personnel Department's newsletter or something of that nature, whether that could be something that's explored in how we educate our employees of what they can do in their personal lives. Because one of the things, when you talk to private investigators, first thing they tell you, the first thing they do is go steal people's garbage.
Garbage, yeah.
And everybody, they'll be concerned about something going in the computer in the city, and they'll throw everything they know in the trash can. And yet, that's probably the source that they need to be, at least brought up to. And I'm just wondering whether that would be an appropriate subject to educate them about their private lives. You get shredders or P.O. boxes or whatever else that can protect.
We do have several different newsletters that we send out associated with different programs that we have, so we can look at where that fits best.
Yeah. I think that would be a very big helpful hint, because I know that when this came about, people were concerned, vendors are in here, they got access to files, what do they know? And yet the same people that may be offended, if you look in their trash can, they gave people more of an ability to steal their ID than anything that happens in the city.
Right.
So
Thank you.
just-
We'll look at that.
Okay, thank you. We'll note and file that. And number 4.
For item 4, you have CEO report as well as report from Building and Safety and an ordinance, and this has to do with off-site signs inspection program fees.
Okay. Item 4 is CAO report on the off-site sign structure periodic inspection program. It recommends the establishment of 2 fees, $186 for the verification only, and $342 for verification with research. In addition to the establishment of the fee, it also requests the establishment of staff to do the inspections and enforce the fee. The request for staffing is 1 clerk typist, 3 building inspectors, and 1 senior building mechanical inspector. The program is designed in accordance with Prop 218, where the revenue we collect is equal to the costs that we need to run the program. And the little over 2 years cost is $1.8 million, and we collect $1.8 million in revenue. So we recommend approval of the fee, recommend approval of the staff.
Okay. Well, in 1986, $600,000 was appropriated for a billboard inspection program. 1986. In 1991, there was a moratorium. All illegal billboards to be removed, no new ones to be established. And there's been problems that have continued since that point. I remember this committee, we approved building inspectors for a billboard program, inspection program, and there were 19 building inspectors previously approved by the council. And I'd like to know what the disposition was, since I understand after those were approved, lawsuits were filed by the billboard industry, and the program didn't move forward. And the question then follows, what's going to happen with these folks if another lawsuit is filed? So the 19 building inspectors that were previously approved by this committee and the council, what's the status of those folks?
Frank Bush, Chief Inspector with Code Enforcement Bureau. The positions, the program actually started in October 1st, 2002. And as you mentioned, there was a court case was filed. An injunction stopped the program. We were ordered to stop on the 31st of October. The positions eventually were eliminated completely out of the budget.
What happened to those 19 building inspectors?
The staff was assigned back into other vacancies and to perform the duties where they were. We did not backfill those positions because it only started, the program only went for about a month, 30 days, and so the positions hadn't been backfilled. So when we had to stop this program, they were then moved back into those positions.
Okay, so the positions they previously assigned, they went back?
Yeah, they went back into those positions because they had not been backfilled.
Okay. And then the positions that are being requested now, the 5 positions, what happens if another lawsuit's filed? Since there seems to be a tendency for the industry to file lawsuits and they don't receive what they're asking for, or to stonewall the projects.
Ray Chan, Executive Officer, Department of Building and Safety. We don't know whether there will be another lawsuit filed. Should that be the case, then what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing. Because right now, once we get the approval of these 5 positions, we're going to put existing staff into those positions. We are not hiring new people. We're not backfilling those positions. In case if the same scenario occurs, then we will have these 5 people going back to their old positions.
Okay.
Assuming those positions have not been cut yet, through the budget process along the way.
All right. And there's 2 groups of billboard companies. Group A, 4 companies with legal settlements, Vista, CBS, Clear Channel, Regency, and then there's the Group B, all other companies that aren't part of the settlement. So what happens to a billboard that is not in the settlement? If one of those companies is not a settlement, then files a suit. Because you've got 4 that are involved in the settlement agreements and other companies, I don't know how many there are, that are not part of that. What happens in that situation?
Let me answer that. My name is Hector Buitrago, and I am the chief of the Code Enforcement Bureau.
I thought Frank Bush was the chief.
Chief Inspector.
He's the chief inspector.
So who's higher status? Remember that when you tell me you're the big shot, Frank.
They're the big shots.
All right.
The
And I'm the chair of the committee, Mr. Carter. Thank you
Yes.
for being here.
You're the big shot, Mr. Zine, when you're in the room. When you're in the room. When you're not in the room.
Go ahead.
the Group B companies or billboards, as they're called in the report, includes those billboards that are owned by typically smaller companies that maybe they own a few dozen or a handful of billboards, as well as individual property owners, because there's some of those. But they would all be subject to the same rules. The ordinance provides for the same treatment, and on purpose, the program has been patterned after the settlement agreement so that it's all consistent.
But what if they say we're going to file a lawsuit because we were not part of that settlement?
I mean, certainly they can, and I guess we would have to deal with that at that time, but, we're hopeful that they would not.
Have we tried to get them involved in this new process?
Not individually, because these are smaller companies, and again, some of them are individual property owners. The building, the building owner actually owns his own or her own billboard.
And they lease it out to whomever?
Yes, maybe, or they actually do it themselves in some cases.
And that may, some of them we will be identifying as we do the block by block survey. We find out who, there's a billboard there, find out who owns it, and then we'll bill them for it.
Okay. And then what happens to a billboard that is identified in the survey, because you're going to go out and survey these with the new inspectors, or the existing inspectors, but the location is not provided by the company? In other words, they're supposed to give you a list of all their billboards. So now you're doing your survey and you find a billboard that's not listed on that survey. Does it count for the takedown requirement or modernization credit? Does the company pay the 186 inspection fee or the 342 inspection fee with research fee?
If a company that doesn't have the settlement agreement, we will bill them the 186 if they provide us the research. If we have to research, the fee on there is $342. That's what they will pay. The credits you're talking about are the companies that Clear Channel, CBS, and Regency that have in their settlement agreements. They're allowed so many credits to do modernizations on their boards. And those are within their settlement agreements.
Now, when you say modernization, are you talking digital? Are you talking two-sided? Are we talking about modernization?
Modernization actually can include several things. The modernization could be the addition of a second phase. It could be a digital conversion. It could be what they call the tri-vision, which is slats.
Okay.
Or it could even be the enlargement of a sign by what they call outcroppings. And all of that is in the settlement agreements, all of that is called modernization.
Go ahead.
Digital is considered part of modernization?
Correct.
How the hell did they slip that by us? Because I was in the discussions on the Plum Committee, and I don't ever remember the term digital being used. Modernization was being used, and we were explained that they could flip it to the, instead of being horizontal, they can flip it this way or go from one side to two sides and things of that nature. But I don't ever remember digital being
The verbiage is in their settlement agreement, specifically talks about digital, tri-vision.
It actually says, I have it right here. It says digital technologies that allow static advertising copy of to be changed remotely by electronic communications.
They can do it from remote facility.
And who determines if they're going to be granted that say a digital on that particular billboard?
They have by right.
It's all covered in the settlement agreements. The billboard companies do have the flexibility to decide which signs they want to operate.
So how many can they make digital citywide?
Each, the larger companies, CBS and Clear Channel, they each can do up to 420.
Each.
420 credits, but then the credits can be used toward different kinds of modernizations, but they could choose to use them all in digital.
I can guarantee you that they're not going to pass up any opportunities to convert one of those signs to digital. The value of a digital sign is just multiples above any other kind of sign. There's just no question about it.
I don't remember when we discussed this in council, I remember we discussed billboards, that there was ever this, you could modernize to make it digital. Because I think what's going to happen is you're going to see majority of the billboards in major corridors turning digital, whether it affects the residential, whether it affects the business, whether it affects traffic. I know I've got a couple digitals in my district. I've got one at Topanga and Victory Boulevard, and it remains for a number of traffic lights because I sit there and watch it. Now I go down to the west side of town, and like every 7 or 8 seconds, there's another advertisement coming up. So I'm at the red light looking, I'm looking up, it keeps on changing, which is a total distraction. I was never informed or aware that whatever the cycle, there's, I guess, a cycle, they can cycle it for every 4 seconds. So if you're at a traffic light for a minute, you're at 60 seconds, you're at that traffic light, they're going to send all that advertising every 4 seconds. And I don't know how in the world we approve something like that.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, you just brought out my point that if you have a stagnant sign and you're sitting there for a minute, you get to stare at that one sign about nylons or something for a minute. But if they're allowed to transfer that sign every 4 seconds and you're there for a minute, that means you get to see 15 different advertisements, which means they get to charge a lot more money with that flexibility to their advertisers than if they had a stagnant sign that they have to send somebody up there, go take down the old one, put up the new one, and then it has to sit there for weeks or months at a time before they get to show a different kind of advertisement.
And this they can do, because I've seen the antennas on the back of the boards, they can change that remote. They don't even have to send anyone out. It's all done remote from some other facility, whatever ad we want to put. So it's a tremendous revenue for the billboard industry. I'm not going to deny that. The fact is it's a huge distraction, and I don't know how this council approved that, or if that was done in a settlement agreement by the city attorney without the council's review and approval.
Well,
was this actually before the council for approval?
Yeah,
We couldn't really answer that question because my understanding is that Councilmember signed that the Department of Building and Safety was not participated in presenting the information to the council.
Do you remember, Mr. Parks, if that was part of it, that we approved this?
No, it's been so long, I don't recall the circumstance. It's been so long that we've dealt with this.
See, there's 3 council members out of 15. They don't recall anything about this digital technology. coming into play. And if there was something done in a settlement agreement with the city attorney's office, with all due respect, if they had the settlement agreement and didn't bring it back to us for approval, there's a huge problem with that. I know I'm already getting complaints about digital billboards, and I think I've got 2 in my district. Now, the west side's got them all over the place, and I'm sure people are complaining about it. I've heard the complaints that it's too bright, it shines in the windows, it's a distraction. I think they want to put some on the Harbor Freeway at the Santa Monica Freeway, which would be a total disaster with as far as paying attention.
I think it's probably not a coincidence that the city attorney is now trying to push for an ICO to ban all work on existing and new billboards.
So we have a settlement agreement, and then the city attorney's gonna try something else, and we'll have another lawsuit, so you're gonna have inspectors that are gonna sit back. So I would tell you very candidly, I don't know how we can approve your request with a big question mark remaining. This doesn't come from you folks. You wanna get the bodies to do the inspection. I don't have any problem with the inspection, but this issue that is come up with a settlement agreement that 3 of the 15 don't know about, I have a real problem with that.
Well,
But the item before us, unfortunately, the settlement agreement has already been agreed upon.
Well, not
But
by
all-
us.
No, it has. It went through, what, 2 years ago, 3 years ago? Yeah, 2006, 2 years ago.
Settlement agreement, or the settlement agreement was just agreed to. It didn't take 2 years to come to this point.
No. All we're talking about right now is for them to be able to inspect billboards, because part of the big problem back then was, could we, should we, are we allowed to charge a fee, right?
Right.
A verification fee.
That was part of it, too.
And exactly, that was one of the aspects of the obstacles we had to overcome. And I remember the discussion was, should it be $135, should it be $186, should it be $342? Because it's only cost recovery, right? We're only allowed to charge based
Right.
on cost recovery.
Right.
And then people were saying, well, I remember I said, well, why should it even be a stagnant figure of 186 or 342? What if 3 years down the road, it costs a lot more? Say it costs 20% more per inspection. What are we going to do then? We're going to have to go run another motion through council and then redo the figure and then have to back up our claim that that's the true cost?
Actually, okay, this time we have done a very careful calculation. After the settlement was approved by council and the mayor's office.
In September of 2006?
Actually, there are 4 different settlements, throughout the period of 2006 and 2007.
Okay.
And after that, there were some changes when compared to the original ordinance. For example, the inspection was changed from a 1-year cycle to a 3-year cycle. And because of that effect, that would take a little bit lesser staff power to do it, and that affect the cost. So for the year and a half, the CEO and also the city attorney's office and our department work closely together to really figure out the cost, so that we want to have the cost so down pat that it could withstand any challenges, any legal challenges from any other sign company. Up to this point, we believe that we have a very good package for 3 years, and we feel that the fee that we collect, first, is cost recovery. Number 2, that we would not be in the red.
Well, I can understand that part, but there still comes the question of the settlement that allegedly was approved.
No, it's not allegedly.
It was
We
not
did it.
allegedly.
We voted on it.
Council.
In full view of I remember voting on it.
Digital part.
No, that's the point. I don't remember the digital part ever being discussed. And I saw it in committee, and I saw it on the floor. And I also had discussions with the point person, city attorney at the time, who's now the head of the CRA, Cecilia Estelano. And I don't ever remember anybody using the term digital, because I already knew from being a former real estate guy that digital billboards are head and shoulders a much bigger profit center than a stagnant billboard, a stagnant face billboard.
Meanwhile, you're talking about how many will they be able to convert from all the companies. You got Vista, CBS, Clear Channel, Regency, and I don't know how many others.
If I may count,
how many citywide will they be able to convert?
Councilmember Zine, we have sent a report to the Plum Committee, because this request went through Plum Committee, and after that, we sent a few reports to address different issues regarding this subject. And there's a report right here that we sent to Plum November the 7th, and the title of that is Status of Billboard Modernizations Based on Legal Settlement Agreements with Clear Channel, CBS, Regency, and Vista. There's a matrix right here. Can I, if I may just pass it?
Maybe I have
We
it,
have
but
some
I don't
extra
see it
copies
here.
right here. That's, we sent it to Plum. I have two.
Yeah, I'm not on
copies of
Plum,
them.
though.
I understand. We understand. We understand.
Pass it up.
And this one, shows the modernization permit applications, the permits that we have issued, and how many were allowed by the agreements, and also the ones that the credits that are left that these sign companies can use.
When you talk about credits used,
Right.
now, when we talk about billboards, there's the billboard, and then there's the back of the billboard, and then there's the digital, and then there's the triangle.
Right.
So when you talk about a billboard, you got one billboard, but one billboard could be digital, so you talk about credits used. If a billboard goes from conventional to digital, is that a credit?
Yes.
If it goes from the front and the back, so they go from one-sided to two-sided, conventional, is that a credit?
Yes.
Okay, if they go digital on both sides, what's that?
That would be 2 credits, but I actually don't know that they can do that. Maybe with a V shape they could, but that would be 2 credits.
Okay, and so the total number of credits they can use citywide is 420 credits.
It's each. It's 878 total.
It's 870.
Total is how many?
878.
So
Clear Channel was 420 credits, CBS was 420 credits, Regency was 38 credits.
for a total of 470. So citywide, we could anticipate there'll be 478 digital billboards.
878.
878.
Yeah.
878. Whether it's a residential district, or an apartment district, or confusing the traffic, or a hazard to humanity, 878 digital boards could be established in the city of LA.
That's a possibility, and that's according
I say
to the.
probability, not possibility.
Well, some, they might apply to the 2 sides, instead of using the digital.
And the original sign has to be a legitimate sign built with permits.
Now, what happens if you determine that the original sign they have is not built with permits? Because we know there's illegal signs. What happens to those?
The settlement agreements has provisions for that, and it's what it's called.
Take it down?
Not necessarily. It's what's called re-permitting.
So now they have an illegal sign, so they put a permit for it, so now it's legal.
They could potentially do that,
This
and
is a settlement agreement? The billboard industry looks like they made out pretty well. It looks like the community didn't make out too well.
You're talking to the wrong
we
guys.
we did not.
The settlement agreement was negotiated by the city attorney's office, correct?
And the council approved it?
Yeah.
Were they sleeping
Yes.
or what?
Don't say they.
I'm saying they, because I don't.
You were there
remember
with
this.
us.
I don't remember this at all.
Don't point fingers.
I'm not pointing fingers, I'm making allegations that.
No, I admit, no,
Something's not right.
I admit I was there.
But you don't remember it.
I don't remember the digital part. Can you?
Modernization, modernization is one thing, digital is.
Yeah, exactly. Structures may be upgraded with backlights. Is that another way of saying digital?
No, that's like your typical wall sign where it has lights and then a plastic face, so that the lights are actually behind the sign, so it reflects through the plastic.
Vista didn't do a very good job of negotiating.
Well, Vista does not have any provisions for digitals, correct?
They have small ones, though, their billboards are small.
And they're the small ones, yeah, 10 by 5 or so.
Yeah, but if I were Vista, I would have asked for a bunch of digitals and sold my company and let the new guys go.
So
figure out
say you
how
have
to
a
make it
small
happen.
digital, say you have a small Vista, okay? But you want to put up the big board, can they do that?
No. They cannot enlarge a sign. The only enlargement is what they call outcroppings, which typically is like, a hand sticking out, or where it says like Toyota or something, for example, things like that. That's the only kind of enlargement they can do.
But again, what's before us is finally allowing building and safety to go forward and start charging the 2-tiered fee and start doing their inspections. And you're still under the impression that this would give you the opportunity to do it in a 3-year period.
Yes, it is very important because, there is a misconception out there thinking that how come building and safety or the city has not been doing their job?
The status quo of not inspecting these billboards benefits the billboard companies,
Exactly.
nobody
Correct.
else.
Correct.
So I want to move the
Exactly.
item.
So,
Exactly.
I'm not ready to move the item. I'm questioning, when you have these inspectors, and you have them discover a billboard's illegal, that billboard's not coming down. That billboard would then have a permit. So, we're not removing any billboards. All we're doing is modernizing billboards, and the inspectors will then document, so we'll get a fee for the billboard.
The settlement agreements, again, provide for demolition of a certain number, actually 49. CBS and Clear Channel agreed to remove 49 of their choice.
So they're gonna be the ones that don't generate a lot of revenue. I mean, you're not
Probably.
gonna remove something from Santa Monica and Westwood Boulevard, or Ventura and Topanga Canyon.
You're probably correct.
Mr. Parks,
I'm going to see this in budget.
you are?
Monday,
Yeah.
if we could get this approved here today.
Well, I know Mr. Cardenas wants to approve it. I'm not happy with it at all. Because I look at too many holes. If you have inspectors that can't do a job other than going out there and checking the board and then making a documentation, we're not gonna solve anything about trying to remove billboard blight in the city of Los Angeles. We basically caved into the industry, and they're winning, and we're not. And we're gonna create hazards. If you put one on the Harbor Freeway at the convention center, I would assume that the Higher Patrol is gonna be upset. I know there was an attempt to do that, to put one either on Staples or the convention center. They got static, like the auto show signs up right now. It's a static sign. But when you've got a motion picture running, you could do a motion picture trailer from the billboard on the digital. It's unsafe.
But the-
Our department, we only carry out the enforcement action according to the codes, according to specific plans, according to settlement. We're not policymaker, but we just need the positions in order to carry out the enforcement. We all know this subject is very hard. If to many people's eyes, this is not really a fair settlement. We just need to do the best that we could.
And it also shows here that the fee, the department's proposed ordinance set a fee for only the first inspection cycle. At the end of the first inspection cycle, Department of Safety would need to have the ordinance revised to establish any new fees. I understand that. The fees do not include the cost of enforcement of orders to comply.
Right.
So if a company's not complying, the fees do not include the cost of enforcement if you have to force them to comply.
We're going to give them an order to comply,
And-
just like any job. And then they will, if they don't comply, then we just have to carry out, we're going to charge the non-compliance fees, okay, investigation fees and all these stuff. No difference than any other illegal construction out there.
It amazes me, though, if a billboard's determined and declared illegal, all they had to do is get a permit to make it legal. They don't have to take it down.
There are some rules, but
Yes.
it's all spelled out in the settlement agreement.
But how are we gonna determine when it was built? If they don't have permits, you don't know when it was built.
Well, they would have to prove to us that it was built before.
And if they can't, then it can come down.
I think this is
You know,
absolutely,
If it is your peace of mind, these are really two separate issues. The billboard program, the inspection program can proceed independent of what happens with the settlement agreements. The settlement agreements, actually, the cure for settlement agreements, as the city attorney is proposing, is that ICO, the 6-month ban. With that, the city attorney,
6-month ban on what?
on alteration or construction or billboards. This is a ban on top of the existing ban.
So we approved the settlement agreement, which is already done, and now we give you guys inspectors, and then the city attorney comes in with an ICO, saying you can't do anything, you can't
Right.
modernize, you
And-
can't
right.
digitize. Then they say, wait a second, we have a settlement agreement, and we're gonna go back to court and file another lawsuit.
The city attorney has told us that they can fight that in court.
There
And-
you go.
and that would-
People are gonna go back and forth like a yo-yo.
Well, but that would not necessarily go after the inspection program, only at the settlement agreements. In the meantime, we're not issuing permits for digitals. So the ICO is what's being designed to go at the problem
Why would
created
they
by
issue-
settlement
but
agreements.
why would they issue an ICO after they approve the modernization, which include digital, based upon what we're hearing? Doesn't make any
You know,
sense unless there's
yeah,
public outcry
I mean-
to say, what are you folks doing?
Right. Like Mr. Chan says, we're not the policymakers.
There's a public comment from Kimon Kotos. Your comment, sir?
Yes, I'd like to address a few issues, council member, and,
Because you had everything checked.
I don't have to bring anything up there, but just as a matter of course. My
You
name is
can-
Kim Kotis. I'm a former staff supervisor for the Hollywood Beautification Team. I helped to, I was served on Speaker Hertzberg's Public Safety Commission, and I received the Good Earth Keeping and Eco Hero Award back in 1998 for removing over 10,000 illegal signs, decals, and advertising around the city.
Are you part of Councilman Zion's community posse that's...
My good friend Barbara Adams is, and we work conjunctly with each other. While I was here during the summer, I now live in Michigan. I've been running for Congress out there, but I've been a citizen of the city of Los Angeles for over 30 years. So I have a true dedication toward this city, and I don't like seeing it trashed. What I observed while I was here for 3 months doing some painting contracting, I've been a painting contractor for over 30 years here in the city, and I've worked for homes and businesses all around the west side and all over the city. I took about an independent survey of areas in the west side, in your district, in the San Fernando Valley, Westwood, Hollywood, and during the time I was there, we photoed at least 80 to 100 sites, and I issued the disc to the gentleman over here for his consideration. I have copies of the pictures. We documented the wide variety of signs that I know that you are very aware of, whether they be on trailers, new lit signs that are attached on commercial buildings, these other digital billboards, and these new lit signs that are at gas stations and public places. I really have a concern about the proliferation of signs that are going around in this city, and I find it very atrocious that these companies are able to manipulate the rules to their advantage. And one of the things I want you to consider, among other things, because I know my time may be running out, but there's a proliferation of signs and a variety of applications of the signs. The taxes that are paid by the companies that are receiving benefits for revenue for these things, I don't even know whether they're being audited. The fees for the permits, I think, are insufficient. A request for application. The community surveys, I think, that could be done with a posse and other community groups. The past history of sign structures, because I've personally witnessed a number of signs that they've enlarged, not only in West Los Angeles, other places, before any of the sign situations went into existence. The use of city power by some of these companies that are situating things on public property that are tapping into the city power thing, whether it be Vista Media or the thing by bus stations, and other things. The misuse of business locations for other purposes. When I used to talk to former city attorney Hahn about whether a business could use their business for other purposes than what they were designated for, he said that was illegal.
Can you pass that up here, please?
Yes, I'd be glad to pass these up and even issue you guys copies of these. But my concern is that the industry is way ahead of this, the legislative process, and we need to make sure that we're more proactive in terms of either creating dedicated public billboards or limiting the amount of signs, because the concentration of these signs in the west side and high trafficked areas is way out of control. It's in every other business in a 1 mile area between Pico and Sepulveda and just north of Olympic and Sepulveda. I counted over 25 new installations of lit electric signs. These were not digital, but there are digital billboards in that area. Another concern I have is about the cross-agency concerns. I know building and safety is often overwhelmed by what they can keep up with in terms of that, but you also have the Bureau of Street Maintenance and other things of that nature. And let's look at who is benefiting from this. Is it the city, or is it the media companies, primarily the film, television, radio, and other businesses that are using this medium to make money off the city? And the community, what is their real input in trying to regulate the blight, the visual distraction? Because I have personally witnessed accidents, and I've eliminated signs from public signs in government property, and I just think it's really out of control. And I'd like to see a more aggressive and proactive approach on behalf of not only the city, but on the building and safety department, and to get ahead of this industry, because this industry is not just those who are paying to get permits. It's all these companies that are literally advertising their illegal activities. I question the premise that they have to assume that they have the right to put these signs, whether they be the guerrilla advertising, the signs and stickers and leaflets and other things that happen around the city, or the companies that assume because they can pay off a business or get a minimal rate permit.
Okay, I get the gist of what you're saying. I have a couple of questions for building safety. The signs that are on gas stations, which there's a photo of here, we see a number of these that are being posted at gas stations, around gas stations. Is that included in the billboard inspection program? These signs that are like they're smaller, but they're on gas station properties.
It's a National and Centinela.
Well, I've seen them on a number of gas stations.
Right.
I understand there was a lawsuit that
Yes.
prevented us. Okay, where's that lawsuit?
Well, we
Is that
haven't.
part of our settlement?
We have an injunction. Those are the what used to be called Metro Lights. I believe somebody else has bought them out.
Okay.
but there is an injunction because they sued the city, arguing that if the city was allowing similar signs on the street furniture, why shouldn't they be allowed just a few feet away on buildings? And they successfully won that argument.
Okay, so what's the status? They're not involved in the inspection program?
They would not be correct, not until the injunction is lifted.
So that the street furniture, they're under city permits, so they can put whatever advertisement they want on street furniture.
For street
Yeah.
furniture, they don't even need a building.
No, they don't
permit
come
from
to us.
because they're on public land.
Oh, right, okay, so the sign, okay, and then the other, and I know that there's permits that are issued now when they're doing the building,
Yes.
and they've got the construction zone with the plywood around
Yes.
the site, they can do those by permit. Okay, that I understand is legal. So what the billboard inspectors that you folks want, they're gonna go out and they're gonna find billboards up and down the streets.
Yes.
And if it's illegal, the billboard company's gonna have to pay a permit. If it's legal, I'm trying to figure out what we're doing with these inspectors. If the billboard is illegal, they're not gonna take it down. If the billboard's there, we're gonna document it's there. What are we inspecting? What are we actually doing with the inspectors?
As of this point, we really don't know how many billboards out there. Certainly, we're not too sure how many of them are illegal, built without permit, and we don't know how many they actually modify without permit.
Okay, say we find out there's 1 million billboards out there and 500,000 don't have permit. Then the companies go out and buy a permit and the billboard stays. So we've accomplished nothing.
I want to make sure that we understand one thing. Let's say if there's an illegal the billboard out there, not necessary that they can legalize that particular permit. There's still other rules and regulations that they need to comply with. But there's just part of the settlement that they would given the chance to do that.
But also, isn't it that if somebody happened to have 100,000 illegal billboards and they can be legally modified to fall within the confines of having a billboard, they don't get all 100,000. Isn't there a limit on the number of illegal billboards that we find during this inspection process that can actually be legalized by number, not by circumstance?
Because the number is limited essentially by the number of credits.
Exactly.
When they legalize a billboard, that's one credit.
Exactly. See,
You know, it's
so
not like they
there
can
is a
legalize
cap.
100,000. Right.
There is a generic cap,
Right.
whether we like it or not, but there is a cap.
There is a cap.
And also, if I remember the dialogue correctly, at least the part that was brought to my attention and I dialogued about, not the digital stuff, but one of the biggest problems we have with the city is that we have to admit that we don't have even a decent system. Our system we don't even know how many billboards we have, legal or illegal or what have you. So this is a process by which hopefully at the end of the 3 years, we will know how many billboards we have, first and foremost, how many billboards are going to be torn down because they hit their caps, and then how many billboards are going to be legalized and converted at the end of the 3 years. The longer we wait to give building and safety the authority for the positions and for them to go out and start inspecting, then again, it only benefits the billboard companies. Because the longer we wait, even if there's only one billboard that has to be torn down at the end of all of this stuff, the longer that billboard is sitting around, the more money they make illegally, without permits, et cetera. But the sooner we identify that one billboard and tear it down, they're in compliance, we know what's going on, and they stop raping the community as far as getting this benefit, but at the same time not having to respect the community or pay for that actual billboard. So this is actually an assessment process and a whole lot of other things all rolled up into one, because we have no previous assessment process.
And
I don't know what happened, but it just went out the window, I don't know how long ago.
I was going to say, when we start the program, then whether it's 49 billboards that CBS and Clear Channel each they have to remove, but also Vista is obligated to remove 500 per their own settlement agreement. When we start the program, that'll be the beginning.
But they're not going to remove any of those 500
Not
until
until we
the
start the
Department of
program.
Building and Safety goes out and identifies them, and then they can start removing them. But until then, they're just going to lay feral and sit around until we tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, this billboard is one of your 500, get rid of it.
And the other project you folks have, news rack ordinance, is that part of your? No. That's street services? That's another thing that I haven't seen very effective with all the inspectors that we hire. We hire people, then we're trying to find out what they're doing. Well, I would say candidly that whatever agreement was made with this, it's not to the benefit of the community. I thank you for your comments. I think this is a benefit to the billboard industry. It's disrespectful to the community, and I look at this as symbolic to catalog, to help the billboard company. It's not going to solve the problem of billboard blight in the city of Los Angeles. And hopefully when Mr. Parks has it in his committee, they can find another recommendation since it's dealing with the budget. But I know our position on personnel is, do we appropriate the bodies or not? I'm very reluctant to appropriate bodies that I think are going to do nothing except write things down on paper and collect money. Meanwhile, the billboard industry continues to go through the...
Well, I beg to differ with all due respect, Chairman.
There will be
They're not going to only write things down and do nothing with it. We cannot tell Vista to start taking down and start amassing their 500 billboards when they're finally done taking down 500 billboards until we, the city, identify their billboards and then start asking them to take them down. Again, us not giving building and safety that authority means that if we don't get around to it, say another council with another chairman 10 years from now finally passes this authority to give to them, that means Vista spent another 10 years without being...
I approved this last time it was before this committee. I approved the bodies they asked for. I approved the inspectors. Did I not, Mr. Chairman? Did I approve the inspectors that you asked to go out the billboard program?
Probably you did at that time. I wasn't in the position.
Well, hold on a second. Does somebody know the answer to that question the chairman's asking?
Yes.
Well, the positions were, the approval was given for those positions initially.
They came out of this committee.
Okay, and then what happened?
And that's what the program was started, we talked in the very beginning. The program was started at the beginning of October 2002. And Clear Channel CBS filed a case in court. The court issued an injunction, stopped the program on the 30th of October in 2002. The program had to stop. They filed constitutional issues that, advertising and the fee. The court determined that once it was stopped, basically the inspection stopped, and the positions were moved back into the positions they came from.
No. The bodies were moved back. The positions were eliminated.
The bodies, I apologize. The bodies, and then eventually they were completely eliminated. But
That was in 2000?
there was an approval, right, there was an
2002.
approval given for those positions.
Which this committee approved.
Right.
In 2002.
Right.
But then
they were
again,
completely
because we live in a
eliminated.
system of balances of power, the courts interceded, and they said, you're going to stop that activity, City of Los
stopped,
Angeles.
right, yes.
So you did your part, but a judge overruled the city.
So 6 years later, we're coming back, while all these new boards have been established at gas stations and other things that we can't do anything about. So we've got more boards that are established. We now have digital, which wasn't the case in 2002. So it's gotten worse from 2002 to 2008. This committee approved the positions, and that was my issue. We approved them. I assumed they were out there doing the job. They stopped, and they come back and ask for more positions now. And now my
No,
question-
they're not asking for more
They're
positions.
asking for the positions to go out there and do the job. Last time it was
Exactly.
19, now it's 5. The question was, the program worked for a month 6 years ago. Nothing's been done in 6 years except the proliferation of billboards.
Yeah, okay, nobody's arguing with you about that, but that's not building safety's fault.
I'm not saying it's going to say so. I'm just saying the reality is
Yeah.
billboards are more prevalent.
Right. And the
Nobody's in arguing with you on that
Going
point.
backwards.
And the reality is, I don't know with these 5 positions, whether we could make the situation so much better. But with the 5 positions, the fact that the day we start this program, we'll go out survey, and we don't have to wait for 3 years to write order. When we see illegal sign or any signs with illegal addition or expansion, we'll write orders right there.
If we don't have a list, how are we going to know they're illegal?
No, but that's
No,
the
we're
point.
gonna, that's why we check with our permit, and that's why we check with our permit, and that's why we take the 5 people, we survey the sign, we also check with our record to see if it's legal or not. If not, right away, we write the order. What the point I want to make it.
We have documentation of permits?
Yes, of course. Okay.
And if we say they don't have a permit, and we say they don't, they say, we're sorry, they can apply and get a permit.
Only if they comply with the conditions, mentioned in the settlement. But the point I want to make is, Councilmember Zine, if you don't grant the positions today or sometime, then the situation will be even worse.
It's exactly
the reason that for the past 6 years, you see all these signs out there because, we don't have any proactive enforcement to go to survey.
You have it for 6 years.
We have, because we have no positions.
I understand.
You know, people always said that, how come you guys don't do a job? Not that we don't want to do our job, we have no positions to do the job.
Well, Frank wants to do his job.
Well,
Frank always does his job.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move the item.
Mr. Parks?
I would support that, and we'll see it again in Budget and Finance. One of the things I was gonna ask, whose photos are these?
The ones that are enclosed
Okay.
in plastic are Mrs. Adams, but the other ones I would be glad to submit to you as they have the digital file.
Because one of the things I was just gonna ask, in looking at some of these that are on construction sites,
Yes.
it's my understanding we have ordinances in certain part of the city that allows
They get permits for those.
this to go on as
It's
legal
citywide now.
signs.
Yes.
Is it
It's
citywide?
Citywide now, yes.
As long as the person that's putting them up is doing cleanup in the surrounding area. So,
That may be, but I first witnessed those things being put up in the middle of the night, and I contacted the company where the major construction sites are waiting permits, and I understand that now they've been receiving money for those signs, but we're talking about 6-block-long set of signs
But
that change.
They now permit that, but
They
the agreement is
permit-
they clean up the area. That's an agreement they made.
Can I address one other thing? I appreciate, I support.
no, I just want to say that when your photo says illegal sign patrol, it may not be illegal signs, it may be by ordinance.
I accept that. My concern also, and I support the idea of adding staff. I mean, I'd love to work for these gentlemen in the city, but my point is that they need to assess, find out what's there. But I believe that under existing law, there may be provisions where they can remove some of these signs that have been put up by some of these independent companies that have no identification or sometimes have an email address, and then they've plastered them onto existing buildings or vacant buildings, and they maintain them. And I do not believe they have a permit, but they often will pay off the individual liquor store
Well,
owners.
I'm not a fan of this at all. I'm a fan of trying to keep the community clean. I commend you for picking up all those signs. So we've had Mr. Parks, Mr. Cardenas made the motion to go forward, and I'll approve that and send that, and that concludes our meeting. Thank you.
Good luck. Thank you. So we have to 19 years.